Are you afraid of ghosts? Are you afraid of ghosts of the Bronte sisters? My name is Nick Holland. I'm a Bronte biographer and blogger. I'm the author of books including In Search of Anne Bronte, Emily Bronte, A Life in 20 Poems, Aunt Branwell and the Bronte Legacy, and Crave the Rose, Anne Bronte at 200. I love the Bronte sisters. I love Halloween. I love spooky stories. So it's time for a Bronte Halloween special. Mrs. Baines's ghost. In 1803, in Penzance, in Cornwall, lived a widow called Mrs. Baines. She lived on Chapel Street in Penzance. She was very rich, and she had an orchard, and she loved the apples from her orchard. But local children did too. They used to come to her orchard at night and steal, scrump her apples. So Mrs. Baines hired a gamekeeper called John. Every night he'd go out with his blunderbuss shotgun and try to catch apple thieves. One night Mrs. Baines came out of her house and found John asleep, sleeping on the job. So she decided to teach him a lesson. She shook the tree until the apples fell, but in shaking the tree, John woke up. He reached for his gun and said, "I've caught you. This is the last time you'll steal apples." Bang. He let fly. Mrs. Baines fell. She'd been shot. She'd been fatally shot. She died the next day. Now, this was 1803, and it wasn't long after that people in Chapel Street, Penzance, said they'd seen her ghost walking around at night. They'd heard her ghost breaking crockery, slamming doors in the house. And it was said that sometimes she would fly, her ghost would fly up onto the wall around the orchard like a hen. And she had high heels on and feathers, and then she would disappear into the night. And people were so scared they wouldn't walk past 25 Chapel Street, Mrs. Baines' address. Now, also on Chapel Street, Penzance, in 1803, lived the Branwell family. And amongst them was Elizabeth Branwell, who was 26 at the time, and her younger sister Maria Branwell, and their younger sister Charlotte Branwell. So maybe they saw the ghost. Maybe when they were younger they'd been scrumping apples. Now Maria Branwell married a man called Patrick Bronte in Yorkshire, and they had 6 children. Now Maria died all too young, so Elizabeth Branwell came up from Penzance as well. She left Chapel Street behind and travelled to Haworth, where she became a second mother to the children, including Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte and Anne Bronte. And maybe Aunt Branwell, Elizabeth Branwell of Chapel Street, Penzance, told the Brontes about the ghost of Mrs. Baines, a tale of abject horror that must have scared those impressionable young minds. The Haunted Staircase. Anne Bronte became a governess at Blake Hall in Mirfield in 1839 when she was just a teenager, and her experience there formed the basis for her debut novel, Agnes Grey, all about a governess. Now, Anne was only a governess at Blake Hall for a few months. It was a horrific place to work, as anyone who'll remember the Bloomfields of Agnes Grey will know. So then surely Anne put Blake Hall behind her forever. Or did she? Blake Hall was demolished in the 1950s and it was sold off piece by piece. Now, there was a very wealthy American industrialist called Alan Topping, lived on Long Island in New York, a bit like a Jay Gatsby figure. And he bought this huge central staircase of Blake Hall, had it shipped all the way from Yorkshire to New York to Long Island and installed in his own massive mansion. Not long after that, Alan Topping died. His wife was alone in the house. She was reading a book she liked to read. She looked round at the staircase and saw a woman walking down. She said it was a Victorian dressed woman, all in grey. And she looked at the woman. She said, "Who are you?" And the woman said to her, "I'm Anne Bronte." And then she disappeared. She was never seen in Long Island again. Could it have been Anne Bronte's ghost? Why would she have hung around the staircase at Blake Hall and then thought, "Oh, I'll travel to America, I'll haunt the Americans"? Anne Bronte didn't get to America in her lifetime. This was her chance. So she appeared in Long Island. Where will Anne Bronte appear next if her ghost really did haunt the staircase? The Hathersage haunting. Hathersage in the Peak District is a very beautiful village, and it's a very important one to literature lovers, to Bronte lovers, to Jane Eyre lovers. In 1845, Charlotte Bronte came to Hathersage with her best friend Ellen Nussey. Ellen's brother Henry had been made vicar of Hathersage, but he'd gone on honeymoon, and Ellen and Charlotte had a month to do up the parsonage, their Hathersage parsonage, ready for his return with his new bride. So Charlotte spent a month in Hathersage, and there she met the leading local family. You can still see their graves in Hathersage churchyard, the Eyre family. The Eyre family of North Lees Hall near Hathersage. And Charlotte got to know the Eyres, and the name stuck in her mind, and the bleak but beautiful moorland landscape of the Peak District stuck in her mind. And a few years later, she put it down on paper as Morton in Jane Eyre. So Hathersage was central to the creation of Jane Eyre. She even took the name. But did Charlotte ever really leave Hathersage behind? A succession of vicars, of priests have come and gone in Hathersage in the 170 years or so since then. But it was reported in a local newspaper: ghosts visit rectory, vision of Charlotte Bronte, spectres' footsteps terrify vicar's dog. This was in 1927. It was said that on a certain day every year Charlotte Bronte's ghost would appear and terrify people. So what happened? The vicar exorcised the ghost, performed an exorcism, said, "Charlotte Bronte, do not haunt Hathersage parsonage anymore. Be gone. Be at rest." So Charlotte went back to Haworth. She's not been seen in Hathersage since. But when you walk Hathersage moors, when you see the beautiful parsonage, when you go in the church, you can still feel Charlotte Bronte there. So has her ghost really left Hathersage? Will she always be there? There is one place we associate with the Brontes, Haworth. So who was the Haworth Grey Lady? Haworth has lots of ghosts. You can go on ghost tours in Haworth. A lot of people have died there. Died young, died in accidents, maybe died by foul play. There's no wonder there's so many ghosts in Haworth. But who is the Grey Lady? It was said a Grey Lady haunts a weaver's cottage on West Lane, near the church, near the parsonage. Who was it? It was eventually turned into a Toby Jug restaurant. In 1974, the owner of the restaurant appealed to the church. "Exorcise Emily's ghost," he said. Emily's ghost turned up in the restaurant. It was putting off people staying there. It was putting off people eating there. And the ghost that he said was Emily just turned up, a tall, slim woman, and she'd laugh and then disappear, a mischievous ghost. Now, you might not think Emily was mischievous, but she was. Ellen Nussey, again the Bronte's friend, wrote to Elizabeth Gaskell to tell her about Emily Bronte. And she said she loved nothing more than leading Charlotte Bronte out onto the moors, because Charlotte had a fear of wild animals, and Emily would take Charlotte near a wild animal without her knowing and say, look at that animal. And Charlotte would be terrified and Emily would laugh. She loved playing practical jokes. So is the laughing ghost, the Grey Lady of Haworth. Was it Emily Bronte? The church wouldn't send an exorcist. Maybe they thought, if it is Emily's ghost, where else should she be than Haworth? In a weaver's cottage. Maybe she'd visited the weaver's cottage when she was the vicar's daughter, when she was alive. And she likes to come back and play her jokes again, and we'll leave her at rest to do that. So Emily's ghost wasn't exorcised. So if you do see a Grey Lady, if you're staying in Haworth, in your hotel, on the street, in the foggy nights, the many foggy nights in Haworth, just say, hello, Emily. Hi. And maybe she'll laugh at you and then disappear. The Grey Lady. Could it have been Emily Jane Bronte? Could she have joined Charlotte and Anne as the Bronte sisters' ghosts in Haworth, in Hathersage, in Long Island? And where will they appear next? At Halloween? The Bronte sisters' ghosts could visit you. The Bronte sisters loved ghost stories, don't we all? And Charlotte especially put ghost stories and supernatural elements in her books. So in Viet we get the ghostly nun. In Jane Eyre we get mention of a Gytrash. Now, what is a Gytrash? Jane Eyre encounters one. She says, I heard a rush under the hedge, and close by glided a great dog, whose black and white colour made him a distinct object against the trees. It was exactly one form of Bessie's Gytrash. Nothing ever rode the Gytrash. It was always alone. So what is a Gytrash? A Gytrash is a devil dog, a black dog. And if you see it, it's a portent of doom. And there's said to be a Gytrash at Pondon Hall. Pondon Hall is a couple of miles from Haworth, from the parsonage. Charlotte, Emily and Anne and Bramwell would walk there across the moors, because at the time of the Brontes, Pondon Hall had the largest private library in Europe. They'd go there to read books. Sometimes they'd stay there in a little bedroom with a box bed, which Emily put in Wuthering Heights. But it's said, a legend says, Gytrashes, or a Gytrash, can be found in Pondon Hall. It keeps appearing, but if you see the Gytrash at Pondon Hall, it's over for you. You're dead. You've seen the Gytrash, and that spells doom. So Charlotte Bronte knew Gytrashes. did she see a Gytrash? She put a Gytrash mention in Jane Eyre. Pond and Hall is a beautiful place to visit. I recommend everyone visit Pond and Hall, but if you think you've seen a black dog out of the corner of your eye, don't look round. Don't look at the Gytrash. I hope you've enjoyed these Halloween stories. Halloween, Bronte style. You know, I love Halloween. The Brontes loved Halloween. And what's wrong with a scary story on Samhain Eve? So if you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be doing lots more Bronte videos. And I'm going to look at the House of Bronte, the Bronte sisters' life story. So subscribe, like this. Follow my blog, ambronte.org, or find me on Twitter at Nick_Holland_. And thank you for joining me today. Don't be scared, but don't look at the Gytrash.